It is exactly 2:17 in the morning. A driver named Rohan is navigating a completely unlit stretch of highway. On both sides, dense forest. Above, a torrential downpour so heavy the wipers can barely keep up with the water. Without warning, a silhouette steps directly into the glare of his headlights. Rohan slams on the brakes, sending the car skidding to a violent, abrupt halt. Standing in the freezing wind is a man in a soaking wet white shirt. He walks up to the driver's side window and asks a simple question. "Can you drop me a little further down the road?" Every instinct tells Rohan to keep the doors locked. The total isolation, the suffocating darkness, the sudden appearance of a stranger, it all signals an immediate threat. But looking at the man shivering in the storm, empathy wins out. He unlocks the door. The stranger slides into the back. Almost instantly, the atmosphere inside the cabin shifts. A heavy, absolute silence settles over the confined space, broken only by the rhythmic thud of the rain outside. Rohan has now introduced an unknown variable into the small, closed environment of his car. Within these four doors, there is no longer a distance between his own safety and whatever this stranger brought in with him from the rain. For several minutes, neither of them speaks. Then, from the darkness of the back seat, the stranger delivers a cold, precise instruction. Don't go any further. There's going to be an accident on the road ahead. Rohan glances up. In the rearview mirror, he sees the passenger sitting rigidly upright. Startled by the specific warning, Rohan demands to know how he could possibly know that. Silence. When Rohan physically turns his head to look over his shoulder, the stranger is gone. The back seat is completely empty. Panic sets in. Rohan throws the car into park on the shoulder of the highway. He searches the cabin, but there is no one there. The only evidence left behind is a deep puddle of fresh water soaking into the upholstery where the man was just sitting. The immediate threat of a carjacking vanishes, replaced by a deep, suffocating dread. Facing a physical impossibility he cannot explain, Rohan hits the gas, fleeing into the storm. A few miles down the road, his headlights catch a horrifying scene. A massive commercial truck lies freshly overturned, surrounded by police. An officer flags him down. He tells Rohan to count his blessings. The fatal crash blocking the road happened merely minutes before Rohan arrived. Seeking answers, Rohan asks if anyone was killed in the wreck. The officer's expression hardens, and he points to a photograph of the deceased victim recovered from the site. Rohan stares at the image. The face looking back at him belongs to the exact same man in the soaking wet white shirt who was sitting in his car less than 10 minutes ago. Desperate, Rohan explains that he just picked this man up. The officer firmly shuts his story down. That is impossible. The man in the photograph died in a collision on this exact stretch of highway 3 years ago. This identification shatters standard logic. Rohan was warned by a man who had been dead for 3 years, preventing a crash that hadn't even happened when the warning was given. The officer's admission suggests a larger pattern at play. This graphic maps out what the reports indicate: a single accident 3 years ago, rippling outward into a repeating annual warning triggered by the rain. Returning to his car, Rohan checks his backseat one last time. Nestled in the damp upholstery is a crumpled piece of paper, the ink bleeding from the rainwater. The handwritten note reads, "You were saved today. Next time, save someone else." If you check the official government and police records for that night, you will find absolute silence. There is zero documentation of any unknown passengers or supernatural interventions near the crash site. But physical records do not account for digital footprints. During the entire drive, an audio recording app on Rohan's smartphone had been running inadvertently in the background. When you play back the file, you can clearly hear the sound of the heavy rain, the squeal of the brakes, and then a faint but distinct voice asking, "Can you drop me a little further down the road?" We are conditioned to think of paranormal encounters as something to fear, but this audio file leaves us with a different question. Can human empathy be so powerful that it survives death just to keep the rest of us safe in the dark?